Marcus held the shoebox up like it might go off in his hands. Dude, what is this blackmail material? He was already laughing before he'd even opened it because that's just how he was, laugh first, ask questions never unless he really wanted to know something. I told him to just toss it in the donation pile, it was old junk nothing. My voice came out wrong, too fast, like a line I'd rehearsed for a version of this moment that never actually happened before. We were packing up the apartment we'd shared for 2 years. Lease ending, both of us moving to separate places for the first time since college, and packing apparently meant excavating every box either of us had shoved under a bed and forgotten about. Marcus found mine under his own bed, actually, which tells you how much storage space we didn't have. He opened it anyway, of course he did. I watched his face while he read the first line of the top letter, and for 2 full seconds I thought about grabbing it out of his hands, and then I thought about how that would look worse than just letting it happen, and then it was too late to do either. Theo, he said out loud like he was testing the name in his mouth. Then he looked up at me, not shocked, not disgusted, just still, like his whole face had paused mid-sentence. Yeah, I said, that's it, that's all I gave him. 2 years of living together, and that was the whole coming out speech I'd apparently been saving up. He looked back down at the letter, then closed the box like he was tucking a kid into bed and set it gently on my side of the room. Okay, he said. And that was it. He didn't ask anything else. We kept packing. We ordered pizza that night like always, argued about a movie like always, and I lay awake until 3 in the morning waiting for a follow-up conversation that didn't come because Marcus apparently needed time to even know what questions he wanted to ask. I should back up, actually, because none of this makes sense unless you know what Marcus and I were like before that box. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue and became roommates purely out of financial desperation, the way most 20-something friendships in expensive cities start. He played rec league basketball on Tuesdays. He dated a girl named Sam on and off, mostly on. He left his shoes in the hallway no matter how many times I moved them. I made too much coffee and he drank the extra without asking. We had a rhythm. Easy, boring, comfortable rhythm, the kind you don't notice you love until somebody threatens to take it away. I never officially told him I was gay. I just never mentioned dating anyone, deflected when he asked if I had a type, let him assume whatever he wanted to assume. It wasn't that I thought he'd have a problem with it. I genuinely don't think I thought that far ahead. I think some part of me just liked having one corner of my life that nobody got to poke at. So the letters coming out like that, in the middle of cardboard boxes and packing tape, wasn't the dramatic scene I might have imagined if I'd ever let myself imagine it. It was quieter, weirder, and somehow that made it worse because I didn't know what quiet meant coming from him. 3 days went by before he brought it up again. We were doing dishes. Well, I was doing dishes, he was drying badly, leaving streaks on every glass, and he just said out of nowhere, "So was it serious?" The guy, Theo. I almost dropped a plate. "Define serious," I said, stalling. "I don't know, man, I'm asking you." He wasn't looking at me, he was very intently drying a fork that was already dry. Like, how long was it recent? College, 3 years on and off. He moved to Portland for a job and we just didn't. I shrugged, because that's easier than explaining what it actually felt like, watching someone pack their whole life into a U-Haul and drive away from you slowly enough that you had time to memorize the back of his car. Marcus nodded like he was filing that away somewhere. "Was he your first?" he asked. "First boyfriend, yeah." Huh, he put the fork down, picked up another one. "I didn't know you had a first boyfriend." "You didn't know I had any boyfriends, Marcus, we've never talked about it." "Yeah, I know, I'm just saying it out loud, I'm processing." He said it kind of defensively and I almost laughed because it was such a Marcus thing to say, processing like a computer, like there was a loading bar somewhere behind his eyes. "I want to be honest with you, I didn't expect it to feel like this. I thought if this ever came out, it'd either be a whole big blow-up thing or it'd be nothing, totally fine, no different. Instead it was this third thing. This slow, careful, unfamiliar thing where my straight roommate kept asking me small, odd questions at random moments, like he was trying to recalibrate 2 years of assumptions one dish at a time. A week later we were at a bar with some of his friends from the gym, guys I didn't know that well, loud and a little too into their own jokes. One of them made a comment, not about me specifically, just one of those jokes guys make without thinking, using gay like it meant weak or lesser or something you'd apologize for being. I felt my whole body go tight and quiet the way it does, the practice kind of quiet where you decide it's not worth the fight tonight. Marcus didn't decide that. "Hey," he said, and his voice had an edge I'd genuinely never heard from him before. "Don't do that." The guy laughed it off, said something like, "Relax, it's just a word," and Marcus just looked at him, didn't raise his voice, didn't make a scene, and said, "It's not just a word to some people at this table, so don't." Nobody at the table knew what he meant except me. I sat there with my beer halfway to my mouth, completely frozen, watching my roommate defend something he'd only known about me for 11 days. We didn't talk about it on the walk home. I wanted to say something, thank you, or that meant a lot, or anything, and instead I just said the night air felt good, which it did, but that wasn't remotely what I meant. "You could have said something back there," Marcus said eventually. "You didn't have to let me handle it." "I didn't need you to handle it." "I know, I wanted to anyway." He shoved his hands in his pockets. "Is that weird?" "A little," I admitted, "in a good way, I think." He didn't say anything else, but he was smiling a little at the sidewalk the rest of the walk, and I remember thinking, this is fine, this is good, this is us figuring out a new normal, and I genuinely believed that's all it was. Then I started seeing someone. His name was Caleb, a barista at the coffee shop 3 blocks from us, and it was nothing serious at first, just a few dates, texting, that new bright fluttery stage where everything feels a little bit funny for no reason. I didn't hide it from Marcus. Why would he'd have to be around it, us living together. Caleb picking me up sometimes. The first time Caleb came by the apartment, Marcus was weirdly stiff the whole time. Polite, too polite, answered questions in short sentences, left the room to go work out 20 minutes after Caleb arrived, even though it was 9 at night and Marcus never worked out at 9 at night. I figured it was just an adjustment, new territory, new discomfort, that kind of thing. But it kept happening. Every time I mentioned Caleb, Marcus would get quiet in this specific way, not rude, just absent, like part of him had stepped out of the room even though his body was still there. He started coming home later, started picking fights about dumb things, dishes, noise, whose turn it was to buy paper towels, fights we'd never had in 2 years of living together over actual, real problems. Sam noticed it too. She came by one weekend and I heard them talking in his room, not fighting exactly, but her voice had that particular strain in it. "You've been somewhere else for like 3 weeks, she said. "I don't know where, but it's not here." I didn't hear what he said back. I turned the TV up so I wouldn't. 2 weeks after that, Sam wasn't around anymore and Marcus didn't explain why, and I didn't ask, because something in me, something I didn't want to look directly at yet, already had a guess I wasn't ready to say out loud. It was a Thursday when it actually came apart. I remember because I'd had a long shift and I just wanted the apartment quiet, and instead Marcus was on the fire escape when I got home, which he never used. We kept a broken bike out there and some empty plant pots, nobody ever went out on it. I climbed out anyway, sat next to him, city noise underneath us, that low constant hum you stop hearing after a while. "You okay?" I asked. "Not really," he said, "honest at least. Can I ask you something and you not make it weird?" "I make everything weird, that's kind of my whole thing, but go ahead." He almost laughed, didn't quit. "When you knew about yourself, did it feel like, I don't know, did it feel confusing before it felt clear, or was it just always clear?" I sat with that question longer than I probably needed to, mostly because I was trying to figure out what he was actually asking me. "It was confusing for a long time," I said carefully. "Then one day it wasn't. I can't really tell you what changed, it just got quiet enough in my head to hear it properly." He nodded slowly, looking out at nothing. "I keep getting all weird when you're with Caleb, and I told myself it was just, I don't know, big brother stuff, protective stuff. And then I realized I don't actually feel that way when Sam brings up her guy friends, so I don't think that's what it is." My heart was doing something complicated and loud in my chest. "What do you think it is?" I said, quiet, because I already half knew and I was terrified of being wrong and more terrified of being right. "I don't know yet," he said. "I think that's the honest answer, I don't know yet. But I know it's not nothing, and I know it scared me enough that I lost Sam over it because I couldn't explain to her what was actually going on in my head because I didn't have words for it either." We sat there for a while not talking. The bike creaked when the wind hit it. "I'm not going to make this weird," I said eventually, "or push you into some big definition you're not ready for, but I need you to know I can't sit out here pretending my whole chest isn't doing something right now either." He turned and looked at me, really looked, the kind of look that makes you feel unbearably seen, and said, "Yeah, same." And then, because neither of us really knew the next line in the scene, we just kind of leaned toward each other at the same time, slow, awkward, like two people trying to parallel park. And it wasn't some cinematic, perfect kiss. It was clumsy. His nose bumped mine first. We both huffed out something between a laugh and a nervous exhale, and then it was just quiet, warm, real. We didn't say anything for a solid minute after, just sat there, shoulders touching, staring at the same patch of nothing in the sky. "I don't know what this makes me," he said finally, voice a little shaky. "You don't have to know tonight," I said, "you really don't. But mornings have this cruel way of undoing what nighttime lets you feel safe about." I woke up the next day and he was already gone, said he had an early shift, which was true, but also felt like an excuse dressed up as a fact. He came home late, barely looked at me, said he was tired, went straight to his room. This went on for 4 days. 4 days of him being careful and distant and polite in the exact way he'd been when Caleb first came over, except worse now, because this time it was about me directly, about something that had happened between us, not around us. I started thinking I'd misread the whole thing, that I'd let one dizzy moment on a fire escape convince me of something that was never actually real for him, just confusion wearing the costume of feeling. So I did the thing I do. I started packing again. I told myself it made sense anyway, since the lease was ending in 3 weeks regardless, but if I'm honest, I moved my moving date up because I couldn't stand being in a small apartment with someone who wouldn't look at me. He walked in on me tapping up that same shoebox, actually. The letters, 2 years of history closing into cardboard again, right in front of him again. "You're leaving early," he said, not a question. "Figured I'd get a head start," I said, not looking up. "Because of me." I didn't answer that, which was its own answer. He sat down on the floor across from me, right where he'd been that first day with the shoebox in his hands. "I need you to know I wasn't avoiding you because I regretted it," he said. "I was avoiding you because I've never had to ask myself these questions before and I panicked, and panicking made me act like an idiot, and I'm sorry. You don't owe me an answer to who you are, Marcus, you never did. I know, but I owe you the truth, and the truth is I haven't stopped thinking about that night since it happened, and I've spent 4 days being a coward about it instead of just telling you that." He rubbed his hands over his face. "I don't know what I am, I don't know if there's a word for it yet or if there needs to be one right away. But I know I don't want you moving out early because you think I don't want you around. That's the opposite of true. That's so far from true it's almost funny." I set the tape down, my hands weren't totally steady. "So what do you want?" I asked. "I want to figure it out, slowly, with you, if you'll actually let me instead of me just running off every time I get scared." He looked at me, and for the first time in 4 days he actually held the look instead of glancing away. "I know that's not a clean answer, I know it's a lot to ask." Yeah. "It's not clean," I agreed, "but it's honest, I'll be honest and clean." We didn't kiss again that day. It felt like the wrong moment for it, too fragile, too newly patched together. Instead we just sat on the floor with a half-taped box between us and talked, really talked, for hours about Theo, about Sam, about what scared him, about what I'd spent years assuming people like him would think of people like me, and how wrong I might have been about that, at least about him. I did end up moving out 3 weeks later, same as planned, but not because either of us was running from anything anymore. New apartment, 10 minutes away instead of down the hall, which sounds like a small distance until you've spent 2 years being able to hear someone's footsteps through a wall and suddenly you can't. It's been 8 months now. I'm not going to tell you it turned into some perfect, tidy love story because it didn't, not in the way movies make it look. There were more awkward nights, more moments where he'd go quiet and I'd have to remind myself that quiet wasn't rejection, it was just him working something out at his own pace. There were nights he introduced me to people as his roommate out of old habit, and I'd feel that little sting and we'd talk about it after, sometimes clumsily, sometimes with him getting defensive before he calmed down and actually heard me. But there were also mornings he showed up at my new place with coffee before either of us had to be anywhere just because. At night he held my hand in public without checking who was watching first. A Tuesday a few months back when his rec league team was playing and he pointed me out to a teammate as his boyfriend, plain as anything, like it wasn't a big deal at all, like it had always been that easy. I still have the shoebox. It's on a shelf in my new place now, not shoved under anything. A while back I added something to it, a ticket stub from a movie we saw on our first actual date, the kind we finally let ourselves call a date. I didn't tell him I put it in there. Maybe someday somebody else will find that box and ask what's inside it, and maybe by then it won't feel like a secret being cracked open. Maybe it'll just be a story we tell on purpose, the two of us, about the time my straight roommate found a box of old letters under his own bed, and somehow that was the beginning of everything instead of the end of anything.